Good evening. Welcome to Ask Mike Anything. I know you're not there yet. I am going to just pulling out cards for tonight. You notice I am not on my own. Maybe. Well, nobody's there yet.
I noticed.
All right. So yeah, you notice you're not. I'm not on my own. This is Pastor Bree. You guys know Pastor Bree, my partner in crime here. We are doing Ask Mike Anything tonight, but with Bree.
This is really unforgiving lighting.
It really is.
It's like a bad angle. It's bad lighting. I feel just beautiful. I can tell why you do this every week.
Yeah, it's not because of the lighting, but I do want
to.
You need to check and make sure sound is working. You're blurry, old man. Oh yeah, we are pretty blurry. Hey, sound's working though. All right. Can you hand me the cable over there that's hanging on the mic stand? That might help with some of the blurries. So let's. I
have a feeling we have children who are playing Minecraft.
Yes, that happens. So we're gonna snake the internet from them before they get it. There we go. All right. So it is Ask Mike Anything with Bree. So you can type in the comments section any question you have, and we will answer it. And here's the thing: is my typical way of doing things is if somebody asks a math question, the answer is just always 42.
Okay.
But that's just me because I'm not good at math. You, on the other hand, are good at math.
Right. Well, that's not an invitation for math
No.
questions.
I'm just saying you're better at math.
Sign on for that.
I still don't recommend sending us your kids' homework assignments.
There are better things to do than to send us your kids' homework. Hello.
I'm just trying to get.
Look at those candles.
Let's see if that's better that way. Nope. There we go. Just messing with the lighting a bit. That's a little better. Maybe. Hey. All right. So
stars in my eyes.
Yeah. So hit us up with your questions. Type them in there. I'm gonna double check the sound one more time because I heard myself, but I didn't hear Bree. So I want to see how Bree sounds.
Dad says sound is good, but
yeah,
you don't trust him.
Why don't you say something?
You want me to say something? What should I say? Helpful. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over
okay, that's enough.
Quite and curious volume of forgotten lore. You can't just stop.
You can.
No, I can't. Nevermore.
I can't hear you both ways. Stop. Oh no, there's good. All right. Hey.
It's your dream.
Oh, Carolyn Manning Bree wants to know what is 6 times 7.
I do believe that's 42.
There we go.
Need to ask Michaela. She doesn't like the 7s. She doesn't really like any of the multiplications, but she really doesn't like the 7s.
Well, Clarky Claremont says hi.
Hey, Clarky. It's been like 40 years or something.
Feels like it. We're old. Wow. All right.
Speak for yourself.
So you guys go ahead and all right. So we have some questions here. Let's start with one from Grandpa Mullet. How do you see your kids growing up compared to your experience?
This is a group question. I think sort of the obvious is we grew up before technology was where it is now.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up okay, so putting aside all of that really obvious, like cell phones and iPods and Netflix, I think that we grew up in a very optimistic moment in history.
Yeah.
There was this sense, we were the boomers' kids who there's just this optimism. The world was this wondrous place. And, we had conquered racism and everything was just going to be wonderful. And look at all the things we could do. And technology was just making lives better. And I think that's obviously very different from our kids growing up in sort of, I say end times. That's not the right way to say that. But even before global pandemic, the divisiveness in the country, the reality of environmental changes, the fact that there's this whole generation that pretty much has no hope of ever owning a home, paying off student debt. Our kids are inheriting that. It's a very different era in which to be growing up. They're kind of immersed in just a different juice than we were.
Yeah. So for me, I remember when I would think to the future when I was a kid, it was very much the Star Trek future. Everybody's working together. There's no need for money. We've conquered most disease. There's just this sense of exploration, and humanity is reaching this point where we explore and we learn and we grow and we enrich our character, all those things. Whereas now I don't know that our kids would look at, if we were to sit down and really have that conversation, what do you think the future is going to be like? Honestly, I'd be pleased if they weren't as optimistic as like a Back to the Future where there's like hoverboards.
Right now, their dreams for the future are no more COVID.
Yeah.
They're very, very, like, that's as far as they can see.
Right.
Is potentially having that not be a thing anymore. Which, technology has been a great gift in the midst of that. But I'm also very aware of the dangers of technology, and we try to walk that tightrope. And I'm glad personally that we came of age before Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I worry sometimes about, our kids' online lives is going to follow them.
Right.
How much are they going to hate us because we share these cute pictures of them as a baby?
Yeah. I don't, but I think for them, it's just going to be,
it's everybody's reality.
It's everybody's reality, right? It's not just them. It's everybody. And one of the things, like if I want to know something about my grandfathers, I have to talk to my mom or my grandmas or my dad. There is no online record of my grandfathers, of what they did. Yeah. But my kids and their kids and their kids' kids are going to be able to go back and watch 177 plus episodes of Fun with Faith.
They're not going to want to. They're going to have more data than they know what to do with.
Right.
But it's part of the reality there.
Right. But there's reality. Like I would love to have bunches of data about my ancestors. And there was a point in my life where I went to cared. But as you get older, you think about those things. Your view of things changes. So I think it's going to be a blessing and a curse, provided, we make it out of the apocalypse here. But Clark wants to know, are you a Duke basketball fan?
So, yes, I did go to Duke. I did my divinity school at Duke. So I lived in North Carolina for 3 years. I did camp out for basketball tickets while I was there. I would say I was a Duke fan while I was at Duke, because everybody was. I mean, that was the thing. I remember going to friends' houses and working on research papers while the game was playing. That was what we did. And I could still tell you some of the players who were a big deal when I was there. And I was like right in between. They won a national championship right before I got there, and they didn't win one until a few years after I left. But I haven't really kept up with Duke basketball since I left. Which don't tell my brother who has, but it's really, for me, it's a social thing.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the sport. Just like, the Packers for me is about, it's something we do as a family. It's a social
thing. By that
thing.
She means watching football.
Yes. Watching the football game. If it was just me by myself,
she would not watch the football.
But I really enjoy it because we watch it as a family. It's something that we do together, and that's what Duke basketball was.
Yes, and
if I had that core still, then I still would.
Yeah,
but
I've liked playing basketball, but like with baseball, I like playing baseball. but like watching it was always tough for me.
I did. So I did go to some home games at Duke, and the graduate student section is right behind the hoop, and it's this little teeny tiny stadium.
Mhm.
Is that what you call it? I don't think that's what you call it for basketball. It's
arena.
Thank you, but it's tiny. But we were right behind when they're shooting free throws. Like they could spit on you. That's how close you were. And it was just a cool experience while I was there.
Yeah.
So.
Ryan RT wants to know, when will we get the next episode of the Simple Theologians? What's the holdup? That's a good question. It probably won't be till the new year.
I'm a little busy the next couple of weeks.
little busy, and honestly, I think Dan and I just both got super busy to try and find that time to do that. We were also having trouble finding the right way to live stream, record, and all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure more will be coming, but probably not till the new year at this point. Though there is Doubt on Tap tomorrow night at 8:00 is our Christmas party. So via Discord. So you should come on and check that out and enjoy that. But it'd be good to see you on there, Ryan. Seriously. You could wear your Mayor McCheese head. That'd be great. Robert wants to know, what's the hardest Bible story to explain to your logical self? Examples being virgin birth, water to wine, walking on water, loaves and fishes.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I'm thinking about it. I think for me, the hard stories are the ones, not necessarily where I see Jesus doing things that I can't explain. I have enough sense of mystery that I'm okay with him doing miracles.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's more, when the foreign woman comes to Jesus and says, "Will you heal my child?" And he says, "Well, I have to take care of the children, not the dogs." Or there's a lot of places, especially in the Old Testament, where you see the message that is perceived as being received from God, which is kill them all and kill their wives and kill their children and kill their livestock. Those to me are hard. And I don't know that that's your logical mind so much as that's trying to reconcile my heart to the God that I have experienced.
Yeah. So I agree with you. The more difficult passages for me are the ones are not the miracle passages, because we're talking about faith here. But the ones where we tend to, or some schools of thought tend to interpret as literal gospel. This is what happened, and God absolutely wanted genocide. When that doesn't ever feel right, is something that the God who is love would want. But we see that lived out today in churches that protest soldiers' funerals and say, "Thank God for IEDs," and God hates fags, and all of those kinds of messages that are not the gospel, that are not true, but it is part of how they interpret the world around them. And so when we see in the Old Testament where people are interpreting what has happened to be that God did those things, those are tough, especially because people want to believe that that the Bible was dictated by God, and not written down after the event, and those kinds of things. So that gets to be more difficult. The miraculous stuff is very much a faith and mystery.
I go around with the miraculous stuff. There have been periods in my life where I've wrestled with it more than I do at this particular moment. I just kind of figure right now there's so much that I don't understand anyways, that I'm okay with not understanding how the miracles worked.
Yeah. Clark wants to know, what's our favorite Bible verse? His is Isaiah 41:10. Didn't we just preach Isaiah 41?
We preached a lot of Isaiah.
I've got to look it up.
His Bible here.
I got to find your Isaiah verse here, Clarky.
Set the wings like eagles. It's a whole lot in that early Isaiah 40s, early 40s. That's good stuff. I'm disappointed in you, Bible boy.
Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God.
Yeah.
I will strengthen you. I'll help you. I'll uphold you with my victorious right hand. Yeah, that's a great one, Clark. Mine is actually a psalm. I want to get to it.
I should say that yours changes. Mine does as well, but I think yours at different moments in our lives together.
Absolutely. Let's see. It's actually all of Psalm 51, but in particular, starting in verse 10, create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and sustain in me a willing spirit. Then I will teach the transgressors your ways, and sinners will return to you. Deliver me from bloodshed, O God of my salvation, and my tongue will sing aloud of your deliverance.
That's not what I would have said for you.
Yeah, whole deal. I mean, Matthew 25. There's a lot.
Yeah, Matthew 25 is a huge. Whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done for me. John 10:10 is a big one for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
I've come so you may have life and have it abundantly. I tend to feel like my favorite is often whatever I preached on most recently, or whatever I'm in the midst of thinking through. Like, I really love the line from Isaiah that we just preached on about taking your faint spirit and giving you a mantle of praise.
Oh, I love
I just think
that.
It's beautiful, beautiful language. But I come back to Romans 8 a lot. I am convinced that neither life nor death, and there's a whole long list of things, nothing can separate us from the love of God.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me.
So Amanda Lossing, hi Amanda, wants to know, how do you respond to people when they say, everything happens for a reason, especially when they say that too after something goes wrong? How do you respond to that?
I know how I respond to that. How do you respond to that, Mike?
They have heard from me.
They hear from me all the time. I feel like I talk about this a lot, but I guess you're a slightly different audience than I usually get. This is theology that I really wrestle with. And a lot of how I respond has to do with the setting. So when our son was sick and I spent a lot of time in the hospital with him, there would be people who would say to me, everything happens for a reason. And when they were like other parents on the floor, I didn't argue with them, because a lot of times that was the only thing that they were holding on to. This is happening for a reason, we'll understand it someday. That was the only leg they had to stand on. When people who were not immersed in that experience came and said everything happens for a reason, I would push back. I would say, look, the God has got to be much more creative than this. I don't believe that God gives babies cancer. I don't believe that God needs angels, and so children have to die. There's a lot of things that I don't believe that God causes to happen. Time and chance happen to everybody. That's in the Bible. Everything happens for a reason is not in the Bible in so many words. Time and chance happen to everybody, that is. What I believe people mean by that, and what I do believe, is that God is able to take anything that happens and redeem it somehow, bring something good out of it. And sometimes that is what I hold on to, is this is utter garbage, but God is really good at upcycling. And so I believe that somehow God will bring something good out of what we're going through right now. Whatever that is, that's different than saying that it happened for a reason, that God has some master plan. Again, there are folks for whom that's a vital part of their theology. I really, really, if you ever feel the urge to say that to somebody, take a second, like, pause. What you're really trying to say is, it sucks that this happened, and I believe that God is with you. and that God will see you through it, right? That's really what you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to say there. Um, and it's okay to say that. I've said that to people. Sometimes people need their preacher to swear because that's just the moment that you're in. So, and we know when not to swear as well. But if somebody says that to me, I tend to receive it in the manner in which it was offered. I often compare it to, again, when Carl was sick, people always felt like they had to bring us something, kind of like they always feel like they have to say something. And some of that stuff was, food we would never eat or just things that we would never use. And I received that as, this is someone who loves me, who wants me to know that I'm loved and taken care of. And I say thank you. And then when they leave, I throw it away or I give it to somebody else. I do the same thing when people just put their foot in their mouth and say, God needed another angel. Everything happens for a reason. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. I know what they're trying to say is, I love you and I want you to know I'm here for you. I believe that God is with you. I don't understand why this is happening.
It's an attempt to bolster your faith too.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to encourage you to hang on, and they just don't know.
Yeah.
And people that aren't in that situation, they just don't know.
Yeah.
We're
all doing the best we can. That's not usually a moment that people can wade through the implications of their theology.
If it is a teachable moment, I will stop and talk with them about the God of upcycling.
Yeah.
That God can take that train wreck and redeem it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned it in a sermon a few weeks ago. There was a good 6-year span between Carl passing away and me seeing any bit of redemption. A 5-year, now that I'm thinking about it. I had gotten a call from a nurse from a funeral home to do the funeral of a baby. And it was the first child's funeral since it was rough. But it was one of those things where God was able to use the pain I had experienced, the pain we had experienced, to help another family. And a few months after that, the mom started waitressing at the tap room here in Ypsi that I frequent for things in the before times, and like she wound up waiting on me and kind of did a, hey, I recognize you, and then that remembrance brought some discussion, some healing for her, some healing for me, and very much a seeing of God at work in the midst of that rubble. So yeah, if you can step out of your pain for a second and understand that person is simply trying to provide comfort but doing it poorly, and that we've all been there, it's a lot easier to accept and set it aside for what it is, and move on.
Well, and it's fair too to find somebody who is safe to be angry.
Yes.
Say, I can't believe people keep telling me everything happens for a reason when this was just crap. And if God made this happen, then God is a meanie, and you can use stronger words than that.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That's real, and God can handle it.
All right. What did each of you want to be when you were little, and when did you both decide that you wanted to be pastors? For me, when I was little, I'm sure I wanted to be a firefighter or a police officer or whatever the kids want to be, astronaut at one point.
Whatever kids want to be.
When I got to high school, it was pretty solid in engineering, design, computer aided design, that kind of thing. And I knew I wanted to go into ministry right at 18 when I had my big old conversion experience, and never really looked back.
I grew up, both of my parents were public school teachers. They were both elementary school teachers for most of my childhood. And so I just kind of assumed like that's what you did. I did go through, I don't think I ever wanted to be like a doctor. I wanted to be an author for a while. I wanted to be an astronaut for a while. Got very into outer space. I think a lot of us go through that stage. When I started college, I was a physics and engineering major because I liked puzzles that had a solution, which is funny that now I'm in theology, right? It's all about mysteries and there's no solutions to anything. But I figured out that that was not what I was meant to do. I didn't have a moment where I went, now I'm going to be a pastor. I took a religion class and I liked it. So I took some more religion classes. And what do you do with that? Well, I could go get a master's of divinity. It was very much an unfolding one step at a time along the journey. And I say that's because God knows that I get overwhelmed by really big jobs if I see the big picture. And so it was very much this process of just take the next step. Okay, here's the next step. Okay, here's the next step. That ended up in ministry. I like to tell people my senior year of high school, we went to a small high school and I'd pretty much run out of classes to take. So I took speech and debate and I almost dropped it on the first day because I was so terrified that I would have to get up in front of the class and talk. And now here I am. This is what I do for a living. I was so scared.
I didn't take speech or debate. I hated it. I hated the idea of public speaking. Even when I went to Bible college, there was a class where we had to preach, but that was the only reason I was getting up to do anything public speaking.
I wish now I had taken more preaching classes.
Too.
Because I was a puzzle person. So when I was in seminary, I took several years of Greek and Hebrew. I just used I was like the scene in The Beautiful Mind where he has all of these connections between everything. That's what I did with the Bible for 3 years, I loved it. But now I love preaching so much and I wish that I had taken more, practical classes and not just the biblical studies side. But it was fun.
All right. Grandpa Mullet wants to know, does Bree remember when I had a full head of hair?
I do. It was expensive.
It was expensive.
We used to spend, he would spend as much in a month on hair product and a haircut as I would in an entire year. And there came a point where I just said, this is ridiculous. And so he started cutting his hair at home and it got shorter and shorter and shorter. It is funny though, when the kids see pictures of Mike with hair, like, what? You had hair? It was very nice hair.
Yeah.
I don't think it would grow in as full now as it was then. But
I don't care to find out.
You look very nice bald. You pull that off much better than I would.
Or either of our kids, probably.
Yes, although we keep threatening them.
All right. What's in my cup? What's in my cup is bourbon old fashioned, made with Larceny bourbon. Yeah.
What if they wanted to know what was in my cup?
Bree is drinking the truest adult beverage, water.
The very finest of tap water for me.
All right.
Yep, that's me.
All right. What movie did you want to preach on that wasn't picked? So for those of you that don't know, we're doing Faith at the Movies in January, and because we can't really go to the movies, we picked 5 movies from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Hey, sweetie.
Night, kiddo. And allowed and allowed people to vote on a Google Forms poll, and we wound up with Sound of Music, Grease, The Princess Bride, and The Green Mile. Those are going to be the 4 we are preaching through or on in January.
Do you still have the list? I'm trying to think of the ones that weren't picked.
Well, if you give me just a second, I can pull that up on the Google Form.
I remember one that wasn't picked that we were kind of excited about, but it's kind of low-hanging fruit, I think, was the Truman Show.
Yeah, the Truman Show.
Which would have been
let's see.
Someday you will get that.
So for the 60s, I was hoping for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, I think Mary Poppins would have been fun.
Mary Poppins would have been fun.
I'm excited about Sound of Music, though. I'm excited about all of
me
them.
Too, me
They're
too.
just not all necessarily what I thought was going to win.
70s, for a while, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was leading, and I was so down for that. Like, I had an Oompa Loompa costume in my head, all decked out.
It's interesting. Superman got very, very few votes.
Yeah, Superman, out of the 48 votes possible, Superman only got 1.
I think. Can I say that Grease was probably near the bottom of my list for this decade? Just because I love Grease, but it's a challenging message to translate and redeem. So that's going to be a fun. Yes, it's going to be fun.
Yeah,
but it wasn't what I expected.
So yeah, I would have probably preferred Superman or Willy Wonka, or even Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In the 80s, was The Labyrinth, Princess Bride, Neverending Story, The Goonies, and Driving Miss Daisy. Princess Bride is what I was hoping for, and that's what we got.
I think I would have been fine with pretty much anything from the 80s. I think Goonies probably would have been the hardest for me to preach, just because I am like the only child of the 80s who did not love Goonies. Can I say that?
No.
Yes.
I wanted to rock the Superman shirt and just love Chunk.
The Band of Misfits and the Impossible Journey and all of that. So it would have been.
And then the 90s was Truman Show, Green Mile, Fifth Element, Titanic, and Cool Runnings. Truman Show would have been good.
I'm glad it wasn't The Fifth Element. I think that would have been really well. Okay,
I would have.
So the Fifth Element itself, sort of the obvious. The Fifth Element is love, like that. Okay, but the movie itself, I'm just thinking through folks in my congregation who have not seen that movie, watching it because the preacher's going to preach on it. And I'm not sure how well that would have gone over. So I think I'm okay that didn't win. I'm a little surprised that Titanic didn't take the 90s.
Yeah. That's all right though.
That is all right. By the time I saw Titanic, it had been so overblown. Like, people had gone to see it 14 times in the movie theater or whatever that was. And so by the time I went to see it, it just wasn't. It could not have lived up to the hype. Plus, I had to go to the bathroom for like the last hour of the movie, which is when it's just water rushing everywhere. And the song was so overplayed. I think that just really, I've made my peace with it. It's a decent movie. I'm sure I could have preached on it, but I'm not crying because it wasn't chosen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there was a moment in time where any of the movies in any of the decades, we both were like, oh, that would be a cool sermon, because obviously it made the list.
Right, but once they all like locked in, the last votes were in. Oh, now we actually have to do the work of putting that together. So that's gonna be interesting. So Clark wants to know on what day do you start studying or preparing your sermon for Sunday? Is it the Monday after Sunday, Wednesday?
Yes.
So yeah, Clark, the process is just that, a process. I have been studying the Bible pretty religiously for 20 years. So in the big picture sense of the word, you're always preparing. And that actually gets to be part of the problem. Is
because we're never off.
Right. When like the kids were doing cute stuff today, and I'm filing that away as that's a great memory. That's very cute, but that'll
probably
preach.
Be in a sermon
that's going to preach. That may preach soon. So there's that kind of thing going on. But typically, at least for me, if I'm able to plan ahead, which has been easier during the pandemic, I like to have scripture picked out, which means I've at least thought through what and usually we're on like lectionary, which is just prescribed readings for each day. And so you're sorting through, okay, is it a Psalm or Old Testament or New Testament, Gospel, Epistle? What are you going to do? And so you've made that choice, and you've made that choice for a reason. There's something in there.
Sometimes. Why did I make that
yes.
choice? But your worship team has been planning on it for 4 months, and so now you're stuck.
If you don't take that, put down that note, you're in trouble. And so there's the general bigger picture, which 2, 3, sometimes if we're lucky, 6 months out, we have scriptures picked out. We have a rough idea of themes, that kind of deal. So like this week, my worship service is concluding around around noon. Thinking about lunch, but I also got the iPad out, and I'm looking again at the scripture for this coming week, and I'm jotting notes, and I'm thinking through things and praying through things, and it's always for me, it's always percolating. It's always bubbling up. Actually sitting down to put words on paper, like typing and complete thoughts, that's usually, for me, it's a Thursday, Friday, at least right now, kind of thing. It's Thursday, Friday. Prior to COVID, it was Friday, Saturday.
I think prior to COVID, mine tended to be much more end of the week. If I wrote things early, they would change. It's again, you'd be percolating, you'd be studying, making notes. I might have an outline early in the week, but actually figuring out what the words are going to be would be at the end of the week. Right now, because my congregation has been recording on Wednesday nights. And so it's really been Thursday. I'm already thinking about the next Wednesday sermon. And there have been weeks where by the time the worship service airs on Sunday, I already have a draft for the next Sunday's sermon. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what I preached this week. And then Christmas. So my church, we live streamed yesterday for the first time. We actually streamed on Sunday, which just messed up my whole schedule, because this Wednesday we're recording Christmas Eve, and then we're live streaming next Sunday. And so right now I already have like drafts for Christmas Eve and for next Sunday that I've been working on. Time is just very, very different right now than it used to be.
Yeah.
And it depends on the week.
Yeah. It's been interesting since we.
Sorry, there's yelling.
Since we, at the beginning of the pandemic, we just did worship together. And since that switch and the pre-recording on Wednesday for Bree, typically we were about writing at about the same time pre-COVID. And so we'd get our first runs done. We'd switch and
look at each other's
stuff, suggest things, change things. It got
a lot harder when I would record on Wednesday, because he typically hadn't started actually putting the words down for his yet. But it's like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters.
Right.
You can't, if you look at somebody else's sermon before you have your own draft, it completely messes with your train of thought. You go, oh, that's good, I'll use that, and you just end up with a big mess.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so that's been tricky. There have been weeks where I have really, really struggled with writing, because I did look at hers to try and help her out, and then I go to write and I can't get what she wrote out of my head. That's tough.
And then there have been weeks where we are on just such completely different, as we've been talking through the movies. There are a lot of the movies where our initial intention are completely have nothing to do with each other, which will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll still be fun, for sure. Grandpa Mullet wants to know, if you had to write a newspaper headline for the past year from your perspective, what would it say? I have a visual aid for you. It can just be a picture. That's it right there. That is a giant dumpster fire. No, I
think for
headline
me,
would be tough.
Yeah, are you talking like our personal lives or globally? Because I think globally, the
Globally, dumpster fire.
yeah, but I think there has been some silver lining. When before COVID, we were running like crazy. Um, our kids had swim team, they had school all day, there were clubs, there was things at all three of the churches. It was just a lot of crazy, hectic running all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as it has been to be with the family trapped inside the walls all of the time, there's been something kind of nice and freeing about that in terms of the time that we have spent as a family and not feeling like, "Oh, I'm a bad mom because my kid's not doing the teams and the clubs and the activities and the things this year. You know what? I'm a good mom. My kid's wearing clean underwear today." Like that's the bar. And I kind of appreciate that. But I think there's been some good, so the stay at home has not necessarily been, I mean, and I don't mean in any way to undermine how horrific the pandemic has been. I know there's a lot of folks. We've been very fortunate. Our income hasn't been impacted like a lot of people's have. Our family has been fairly healthy compared to a lot of, like, I'm very, very aware of that. We're able to keep working, but we're not frontline. Um, and so for me, I try to frame it. This is funny because I'm not the optimist in the family, but I try to frame it sort of positively in terms of, safer at home. Your
Yeah.
family doesn't suck.
And
Lots of screaming.
And for me, my biggest hope, and I don't know how I'd condense it into a headline. Probably could, but I have other things I have to write right now. But the biggest thing for me, or what I'm hoping is going to be the big takeaway for everybody, is that all the things that were keeping us so busy, all the things that we thought were so stinking important, are not. A lot of it was just stuff that had us trapped and we didn't know it. And I like that we can maybe as we move forward, we can actually move forward culturally, societally, in a way that's going to make us better. Speaking
I don't
of
think we actually came up with any headlines.
No, sorry, Pops.
It's the editor's job.
Here's the headline: We can do better.
Yeah. That's
All right. So Scott Heinowski says he just heard that Disney is planning something like 15 new Star Wars series, 15 Marvel series, and 10 new animated series. If you could greenlight a new streaming TV show, what would you greenlight? Yes, please. All of them. No. I
mean, am I coming up with something from scratch? Am I bringing something back? Am I? Oh.
I don't know. I saw. Yeah. I'm good with anything.
Do you remember there was a TV show that we watched that was like the network or something, but it was all the people lived in their little apartments and they only interacted online, and even when they they met. Is that what that was?
The Circle, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that this year. That idea of we all live in our little apartments.
Yeah,
we only
a little
interact
reality show.
Yeah, I would probably greenlight some brainless reality show because that just is helpful to my mental state. The world is so heavy. I would need a comedy, or some brainless reality show.
Yeah. I don't know what Clarky's going on about Starship Troopers. I think you might be having a conversation elsewhere. I'm a Starship Troopers fan, Clarky.
Maybe he's upset that it wasn't on the list of
that could
movies. Would that have been 90s or would that have been
late 90s? Yeah.
I'm not a big Starship Troopers fan, so I don't know that I would go so far as to call that like a universal classic movie to the point where people of all generations. There were some movies on the lists of movies, classic movies, where we were like, oh yeah, and then we're like, no, our churches would not get into that at all.
Yeah.
So that's always a factor.
Yeah. All right, here's a question from Clarky. Let me ask you this. His best friend is an atheist. What can I do? Clarky, you can continue to be best friends with your atheist best friend. I'm going to say this even with the possibility of my buddy RT still watching, who is like the vice chairman for American Atheists in Michigan or something like that. Like, he knows his stuff. There are atheists that I know who are some of the most Christ-like people I've ever met. And I know he hates it when I say that. But this is the thing. Is Jesus didn't walk around converting people. Not in the way we think. Jesus interacted with people and their lives were changed. That's how I see a lot of what we're supposed to do, as far as proclaiming the gospel, as far as any type of making disciples of Jesus Christ. It is about living with people, relating with people, and changing and impacting their lives because of our Christ-like life. So my buddy RT, I am never, unless he wants to sit down and talk scripture, I'm never going to sit down and try and convince him of something. He's my friend. No matter what he believes, he's my friend. He's a good person. And I'm gonna love him like I love anybody. That's just how it's gonna be. It is not our job to convince people. It's our job to live Christ and let God convince people. And if they're not convinced, that's between them and God. At least that's my point of view.
Yeah, I think I would say something very similar, that you love your friend. You don't have to hide who you are. You don't have to hide what you believe. But it's also very easy to turn people off by trying to beat them over the head with your beliefs.
Yeah.
So a lot of being honest, a lot of listening, and just a lot of maintaining the relationship. That's what I would say.
I agree.
You would agree, because I just said the exact same thing that you said.
Robert wants to know if we can give a specific example of a sermon you thought was great, but fell flat in front of a congregation. I can, but it's nothing recent.
Just because you haven't had a congregation in a really long time.
Okay.
So much of my sense of sermons falling flat has to do with the energy of the congregation. And so it's you have to go back to when there were congregations. Yeah.
So, but even going back to that, I would still have to go back a long way. Honestly, I would have to, like, the one that sticks out in my mind is literally my first sermon out of Bible college. I was serving in a Southern Baptist church, and I got up armed with every last little tidbit I learned in Bible college, and I packed it into a sermon.
Oh, sweet.
And this is, this sermon has taken place at a Southern Baptist church in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And like it went so far over everybody's head. It was like under their feet. It had circled back around. And it was not just over their head, but so unnecessary. That's one of the things I've had to work on a lot over the years, is the editing, because there are so many things you can say. And this is one of those things where when you are preparing a sermon, when you're working on it, there is so much stuff that you glean just in your observations of the text, and then you add commentaries on top of that, and articles that you've read, and stories that have been published, and all of these things. And there's so many things that draw out from this little passage that you have in front of you. There's so much around it, and so much around it, and you have to get it down into something people can for lack of a better word, consume, something people can accept, something people are going to be able to receive. That when you pack it in too much, it very much becomes just a mess and falls flat. I'm sure there have been others.
I think,
but I can't think of a specific one other than that one.
I know there have been, but for me, it's kind of like I said, my favorite scripture is probably whatever I'm working on right now. You kind of, however the sermon went, however it was received, you're already thinking about the next one. It's already, I just did the dishes. What am I going to make for dinner tomorrow night? There's that immediate shifting. So I can't point to a specific sermon. I know that they've happened, but it is the nice thing is you immediately you get another chance.
Yeah. And that's
the flip
the thing.
side is you get really lousy sermons that people are still talking about 5 years later as the best sermon they've ever heard.
Yeah. As a preacher, you get about 45 at bats a year, give or take. And they can't all be home runs. They can't even all be hits.
Yeah.
It's not likely to happen. But and there are times too when maybe the lectionary or your planning lets you down. You wrote your sermon for this week, but didn't really look forward to next week close enough, and next week is
stole your own thunder.
Yeah, you just trampled all over next week, and I think I caught you for this week going into next week. Either you set it up perfectly, or you kind of
I will
stole a little
confess
thunder on
that I had not looked ahead since we did the planning.
Okay.
But I think it will still work. That's part of the reason I was already working on that sermon today, is because I was going, if this scripture is not going to work, if I have stepped all over it, I need to make that decision now.
Yeah. Yep. So and that's also one of those things where in an effort because I was writing the same time she was writing, in an effort to not to try and not glean too much for my own, I missed it. So but yeah, that's one of those. It's
also the Sunday before Christmas, and I think people will be fine no matter what happens.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, all due respect to preachers, people aren't necessarily tuning in for the preachers this time of year.
And sometimes it feels like any time of year.
Well,
it's a difficult thing being a preacher. You don't, I mean, other than if you print out your sermon, Bree prints out her sermons on paper and then keeps them in binders.
I've already used the paper. So.
Right. And there are,
I don't trust the interwebs.
14 years of preaching for her, 45 plus sermons a year.
Plus all of my sermons from seminary.
Yeah. So there's a lot of binders of sermons, but that's not really our product, right? No. Our product is making disciples, and you don't always get to see that. So I want to tell you folks,
it's not measurable in the same way as you get to the end of the day and you say, look, here is this doodad that I made at work today.
One of my least favorite jobs ever. I worked in a factory in Peshtigo, Wisconsin, that made laminated wood. It wasn't a bad job, but it was very, very monotonous. I stood at one end of the machine and I fed a board into it all day, and somebody else picked it up off the other end, and we made a pile of wood, and then we grabbed the forklift and moved it over, and then we started on another pile. But at the end of the day, there was a huge pile of wood that we had sent through the machine and was going on to the next process. You could see that. You don't get to see that as a preacher, not very often as a pastor.
Oh, but it's so magic. It's a wonderful when you do.
Oh
Somebody
my gosh.
says something, does something, your congregation does something, and
Yep.
you're like, oh, they get it.
Yes.
It's
I've had a few people from time to time do the thing where it's 3 months later and they come up and they're like, hey, do you remember that time when you said this in a sermon? Well, we just did this because of that. It's like, oh my gosh, I forgot I preached that 3 months ago. But now I remember, and that's amazing. I'm so glad that stuck with you because you don't know. That's why I did a rant a couple weeks ago on Facebook about making sure, and I know some of you may have connections to our congregation, some of you don't, and this isn't me or Bree begging for please say something nice about our sermons, but there's a reality that yeah, we don't get the feedback. We can't
There's
see
no
the
sense
energy
of
in the
energy
room.
in the room. There's not even the shaking hands on the way out the door going, good sermon preacher, good
Right.
sermon preacher, which we always complained about before. I miss it.
When we were
that
yeah.
connection.
That
it's
at
just
least
not the same.
at least there's an acknowledgement that you knew there was a sermon, right? I mean,
you stood up and talked, and I listened.
Yeah,
like even that.
Because understand the sermon writing process, while the for us the study of it and the figuring out how it applies and all of these things is very enriching for us spiritually.
It's not about us.
It is, yeah, it's not about us. It's about taking it to a point where it can be received by a large body of people, and knowing that hits home for folks. And when there's no feedback, I don't know if a sermon fell short. I know
people were really watching it, or if they were playing Yahtzee and just had it on so that we got credit for being in church.
Like, I know I can walk away from a sermon on a Sunday morning pre-COVID, and I can be like, yeah, that preached. I could feel the energy in the room. That preached well. People resonated with it. Or not so much. But when I'm preaching in front of a green screen, or in an empty church building, I can't tell. I can't, and that makes it very, very difficult to know whether an impact is being made. And so I want to encourage you. If you're watching a live stream or a pre-recorded thing of your pastor, let them know. Like even if what you do is, if there is a piece of the sermon you're listening to, and you're like, oh, that's a good point, type in amen. Like, let the pastor know, hey, somebody's engaging with this. Somebody heard that line hit home. Because it's an art. It's an art form. This writing of sermons, and having you don't have to blow sunshine at me or at any pastor, but letting them know that you heard it is huge. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions. I do have a couple of pod deck questions, so we're gonna do these. These are for you tonight, Bree.
No.
Yep.
They're teamwork.
Nope. Here we go.
42.
What do you think is the most unpleasant sounding word?
What do I think is the most unpleasant sounding word? The actual sound, I'm thinking of harsh sound, like clang.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
I know people don't like moist. I can live with moist. I want me to say it again, moist. But I'm thinking of this like sounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What characteristic are you most known for?
I don't know. What characteristic am I most known for? My indecision?
That could be, but okay. Okay, y'all. I'm gonna tell you this.
Hey, you be nice to me.
We discovered a new, it's not a new show, it's been on for a while, but it's on Netflix called New Girl.
We watched 1.5 episodes.
We watched
of today.
1.5 episodes of it, and I cannot get over the fact how the new girl, the person Jess in the show, is an alternate universe version of Brie.
She's sweet and she's conflict avoidant and she sings little songs.
I'm watching this. I'm watching this, and I look over at Brie, and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Brie, but in a different universe."
Yeah, but we watched what was it, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation yesterday, and I looked at Mike and I said, "This is the dad you aspire to be, isn't it?" And I said, "No, this is the dad that you are."
I may
So,
be
yeah,
a touch like Clark Griswold.
Both ways.
Do you have a favorite number? Any particular reason why you like that number?
I mean, the obvious answer is always 42 because it's
Of
the
course.
answer for life, the universe. I do like 10 because you can do 4, 3, 2, 1, and that adds up to 10. Like it's a pyramid number. I think there's a name for that. I don't remember what it is, but
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a good, nice pyramid.
Would you rather pull a tooth with a pair of pliers or brand yourself with a cattle prod?
Probably brand myself because I don't think that I would have to. That I would just. It would be really hard to work myself up to pull the tooth. Not that it would be like easy to brand myself, but I feel like it'd be more like, and it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it would hurt, but it's not like you have to keep yanking and pulling. And is that the right answer?
Okay, Danielle, you're watching. You love New Girl. Tell me that's not Brie in an alternate dimension, in an alternate universe.
Oh, I think she's got a little Danielle in her too.
A little bit.
Any human female.
Okay. There's that piece, but she's also brunette and glasses and very much.
They help me see.
She's already quoting it, folks. Yeah. All right. Somebody wants to know, how did Braylee's debut on the Lego Network go? So here's the thing. Braylee came up to me today and asked me if I could play Legos with her. And I said, well, what do you want to build? And she said, I want to build a castle. And I said, okay, well, I don't have time right now, but I can get the Legos out for you and you can build your castle. She's like, oh, good, because that's what I really needed anyway. I couldn't get the Legos out. I just needed the Legos out.
I didn't want to hurt your feelings.
So I get the box out for her and I take the lid off, and like intermixed with the Legos are these little styrofoam blocks. And so Braylee decides that what she wants to do is separate out the styrofoam blocks from the Legos. And then she has the brilliant idea that she's going to record this because she might be able to use this for like extra credit at school. This is a 6-year-old in kindergarten.
It's like her own YouTube channel.
Yes.
All day today.
So I set up the iPad. It's like hanging from a sock on a laundry basket, but it's right on her and her stuff. And she's there for 15, 20 minutes all on her own. Michaela's up in her Zoom school, and she's like, this is a blue block, and it goes in the blue bucket. And this is a green block, and it goes in the orange bucket because I don't have a green bucket. And there are red blocks that have triangles and little half circles in them. And she's just doing this whole thing and talking about the stuff she finds. And I'm like, this kid is awesome.
She did like her own little TikTok the other day. She said, hi, I'm Braylee, and I'm going to sing Jingle Bells, or whatever she sang. And she gets the answer, like, that's the end. Thanks. Bye. But she was so she had me playing Legos with her today while we were on video. And she kept talking to the video, and I kept also talking to the video because everything I did was wrong. I was playing with them wrong. But she'd talk about, please like and follow and comment, but don't comment right now, because if you comment right now, it will mess up the video. So comment later. She was very, very.
Oh, she focused. Saw like a notification come in on top of the iPad while she was doing that, because
she got very upset about the notification. Right. So that's why she doesn't want you to comment now.
And it was like
Not
a text.
while we're live.
It was like an email to me or something, because it's one of my iPads. It's just ridiculous. But yeah,
she had fun. It was a long time today, and she was very engaged. Good. Technically, there was a screen involved, but I'm still counting that as a win.
Oh no! Like, just if they're just video recordings, I'm cool with that. It's when it's like, go watch the screen. Yeah, that drives me nuts. All right, so Amanda wants to know, how is my weight loss journey going? Yeah, you never get to chat with me. Yeah, that's true. So being perfectly honest, it's going pretty crappy. The pandemic has not been good to me.
Even before the pandemic, you had slipped a lot.
It was one of those things where it's like, what they tell you is, you're going to lose, and then you're going to gain a certain percentage back. And I just kind of let that keep slipping. Now,
yeah, the discipline disappeared.
Yeah.
Which partly was like right after your dad got sick. Because I remember when you were up north with your dad, you were still going to the gym every day.
Yep.
And then it just sort of became, I'll miss a day, I'll miss a couple days, I'll have an extra something today, and you fell back into old habits.
Yep.
And because I love you and I don't want to be the naggy wife who tells you not to do all that stuff all the time.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that's very much on my heart these days. I'm trying to think of ways to do workarounds because I can't go to the gym.
You can't out exercise a lousy diet, so that's a place to start.
Thank you, dear.
I'm not that wife that nags and tells them what to do, but we have been on this Ferris wheel before.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's difficult. I'm glad you're keeping up with it. And do yourself a favor and don't stop.
Do the stuff they tell you to do too, because Mike, totally, I love you, was like, I know what to do. I've got it. I don't have to do follow-up doctor's appointments or keep up with these things. And
there were we
definitely miss the support that you had up north. Was huge. And having the gym a half a block away with the personal trainer who, we just haven't been able to reproduce that down here.
And it's not gonna, it's gonna be a matter of buckling down on the diet, making sure we keep certain things out of the house, and those kind of things. But yeah, thank you for asking, Amanda. I appreciate that. And we are over our hour. Y'all like having Brie on here, so that's good.
New and different. I'm not as cute as Braley or Michaela, though.
No. But I think this is probably going to be it until next year. And so if you do have questions, if you just want to chat, hit me up on Facebook, Messenger, text me, all those kinds of things. I'll still engage with you. But this will probably be the last Ask Mike Anything until January. Yeah, weeks. We're pre-recording a bunch of stuff just so we have time to get the other stuff done that we have to pre-record.
And then some of it's still live.
So. That's right. All right. So take care, y'all. We love you, and we'll see you next time.